include digital writing, e-lit or electronic literature, and digital humanities in general. And thanks to USIEF, United States India Educational Foundation, we have been able to host Professor Flores here. This is his first public lecture for IIT Jodhpur. I'd like to thank him for graciously agreeing to do this for us. And we sincerely hope that there will be many more in near future. And the title of today's talk, as you all know, is The Importance of Digital Writing in the Age of AI. On that note, I'd like to hand it over to Professor Flores.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to thank my hosts, Purichai, and Tonisha, who worked on the proposal, Dr. Natasha Tudan, who invited me to her class, and to all of the great students I've had here, and the new faces in this room, that I hope you enjoy the very nerdy things I'll be talking about for the next, about 40 minutes. And we'll have some room for questions and discussion afterwards. All right, so the importance of digital writing in the age of AI. One thing you should be aware of is, let me see if I'm, not in the way of the presentation. Throughout this presentation, you're gonna see these sort of avatars of me. I call them cyber Leos. You'll see the common elements: flowery shirts, yellow glasses, and a cyborg kind of mix. And part of the idea, let's just say this is an idea that I will develop in this lecture, and you will understand why all the cyber Leos throughout. All right, so a little bit about my work. So I research electronic literature and digital writing, and I've been doing this for more than 25 years by now. I was part of this task force formed by the Modern Language Association and the Conference on College Composition and Communication. This joint task force offered guidance to the field of writing and literary studies and English departments and language departments in the US and really around the world on how to think about AI and its impact on writing, on pedagogy, on teaching, right, on literacy, and what kinds of policies we might come up with. That group ended its work at the end of 2024, beginning of 25, and now I'm part of a new MLA, Modern Language Association Task Force on Generative AI Initiatives. And I will be leading a working group that will offer guidance on AI and research. We have published guidance. If you go to aiandwriting.hcommons.org, you can see some of the guidance that we have in terms of policy, literacy, and the very first one, which was kind of presenting a sort of overview of the issues. As students, you may be interested if you go to the MLA handbook, or you just do a search for MLA Student Guide to AI Literacy, or you use that QR code, you will find one page on two sides, a document that really kind of offers a nice, basic, straightforward, user-friendly guide for students in thinking about how you might want to incorporate AI in your own work or not, right? The idea is to develop that literacy. Now, a little bit of context, and those who took a class with me will know some of this, but I will actually, for the benefit of all the new faces we have here, I do want to share some of these examples. So we think of generative AI as wow, this new thing. But really, the first work of computer-generated writing was done in 1953, and it was a love letter generator that Christopher Strachey created. So if we look at this here, Here's an example of some of the love letters that it generates. This is a web re-implementation. Dear Moppet, my avid love treasures your passionate enchantment. You are my dear rapture, my lust affectionately sighs for your dear enthusiasm. I'm going to pause this. For dear enthusiasm, you are my precious hunger, my wistful enthusiasm, my eager devotion burningly hungers for your amorous hunger. My lust hopes for your loving heart. You are my fervent affection. My fondness tenderly wants your ardor. My charm covetously pines for your passionate heart. Yours tenderly, M.U.C. And M.U.C., people, when they saw these letters, because they would print them out and post them in bulletin boards around the university, Manchester University, back in 1953, people would be like, who is this M.U.C. writing these love letters, right? To. And M.U.C. stood for Manchester University Computer. This was one of the very first computers that left the military for code breaking and was built at a university. And so every time you run the program, it will generate these kinds of letters. And notice they have variations, but they're all generated from a small language model, if you will, a set of templates, variables, and data sets that it would pull from. Adjectives, nouns, greetings, all of these things. Okay. ELIZA. Back in 1964, we have the very first bot that Joseph Weizenbaum created at MIT. And this bot pretended to be like a doctor, a psychotherapist, that would focus attention on you as a reader. I'm not going to demo ELIZA, but basically people would have these conversations with using teletype, and some people would be fooled into thinking they were having a conversation with a human being. And it was like an attempt to pass what is known as the Turing test, that you cannot tell whether you're having a conversation with a human or a bot. In 1983, Richard Chamberlain used this program called Ractor to produce a work called The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed. And it is, in theory, or so they claim, the first book ever written by a computer. And so you can see that there. Let me move this aside here. And it generated all kinds of absurd and poetic and literary text. So for example, let's just scroll down. Right here you have this image. War, chanted Benton, war strangely is happiness to Diane. He was expectant, but he speedily started to cry again. Assault is also her happiness. Coldly they began to engage and revile each other during the time that they hungrily swallowed their chicken. Suddenly, Lisa sang of her desire for Diane. She crooned quickly. Her singing was inciting to Benton. He wished to assassinate her, yet he sang, Lisa, chant your valuable and interesting awareness. Lisa speedily replied. She desired possessing her own consciousness. Benton, she spoke, you cry that war and assault are a joy, and it goes on. A joy to Diane, and it goes on. So just to give you an idea of the texts that were generated using this program called Ractor. Ractor was short for raconteur, and it was, this is 1983. 1984, somebody publishes a travesty generator for micros, which allows people to do, using a technique called Markov chain generation, to feed a text to a machine, to a program that would create a probabilistic model of, and then could generate text based on that probabilistic linguistic model. And so it generates these absurd texts, but they have moments of clarity, right? Between 1990 and 2019, there was a Loebner Prize for chatbots. So the idea was that you would try to create a chatbot that would pass the Turing test, that would make people think that they were having interactions with a human being. Philip M. Parker This is ongoing. He's alive. He's still doing, he has authored over 1 million books using computer generated techniques. He has a variety of computer generating programs and will generate books like something like, I don't know, precipitation reports and water tables in Jodhpur in Rajasthan. Like he would gather that data and just feed it into one of his things and it would generate a book and they would publish that. And if you go on Amazon and look for Philip N. Parker, you'll see maybe he has like 23,000 active books for sale. Super specialized. They're not going to win any awards for anything. But here he is, just producing books. From 2013 to the present, NaNoGenmo, or National Novel Generation Month, has been a community effort where people will spend the month of November producing code that will generate a novel that's at least 50,000 words in length, and then we'll publish the code on GitHub. So if you search for NaNoGenmo, you will find it. There's easily over 1,000 novels that people have created there. And many of them, and this has been going on since 2013. So 12 years of 11 years of NaNoGenmo. This November will be the 12th year. You can see things generated using GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, all before ChatGPT came out. And then, of course, in November 2022, ChatGPT launched. And let's go back to the presentation, full screen. And a moral panic ensued. People freaked out about the whole ChatGPT thing. You get articles like the college essay is dead, right? I mean, for the first time, we have computers that can pass the Turing test in writing, not just in chat, but can produce text that will pass as if it were written by a human being. And this AI moral panic, these are many of the things that have been said about this. Students will cheat with AI. AI is a plagiarism machine. AI will displace writers and artists. AI will take your job. AI steals your intellectual property, which is not, all of these, there's some truth to all of these. But the thing with moral panics is that they take other anxieties that we have and you clamp them on, and then that becomes the focus, right? So this is almost like a scapegoat for all the other anxieties that we have. AI is financially, kids, new generations won't learn to think or create or express themselves through writing because AI will do it for them. AI is financially unsustainable and AI is bad for the environment. Again, there's a lot of valid reasons to critique AI, but there is this moral panic going on. For example, here's an article in the Washington Post with the headline, "A bottle of water per email, the hidden environmental cost of using AI chatbots." So according to them, it's like every time you used AI to generate an email, it was like taking a bottle of water and just pouring it, throwing it away, right? Now, one of the things that they do in that analysis is they say, okay, they compare it to beef production. This is a very American publication, so, beef production for food is a big thing there. It takes about 6,992 liters of water to produce 1 pound of beef, mostly used to grow feed, clean the farm, and hydrate cows. Training GPT-3 has the same water cost as producing 100 pounds of beef, nearly double the amount an average American eats in a year. But then Ted Underwood, it's like, it gets worse. Read the article to the end. Every time you eat a quarter-pound hamburger is the equivalent of 1,748 liters of water. So if I skip a hamburger, I can ask ChatGPT to write 3,368 emails, one a week for the next 64 years. So That's the thing about moral panics, right? We're panicking. Oh no, every time you put a prompt on ChatGPT, it's like you're throwing away a bottle of water. You're pouring away a bottle of water. But in the US, people like their hamburgers, right? And eating one hamburger is like doing 1,748 liters of water. I mean, a bottle of water in the US is like maybe half a liter. So really, like, think about it. We're panicking about AI, but not about the environmental impact of beef and hamburgers, right? So again, that's the difference in the moral panic. Let's look at this further. He goes on to explain the water argument against AI is something people are going to find amusing 10 years from now when AI is largely running on laptops and phones. I have an AI model installed on my laptop and I can run it directly on my laptop. It's not, yeah, training the model used a lot of water. There's a real impact there. I don't want to minimize. There is an environmental impact, and we should hold these companies accountable, and we should demand better practices. But the bigger issue is just computation. This is just a small portion of things. But just to put moral panic as a concept in perspective for you all, here are two examples of earlier moral panics. So check this out. Radio. Back in the times when radio started, people had a moral panic about radio, and they said things like listening to the radio too much would harm children and lead to illnesses because the body needed repose and could not be kept up at the jazz rate forever. No locks will keep this intruder out, nor can parents shift their children away from it. Radio. Do you ever think radio would be a corrupter of youth? And I mean, again, you can see the moral panic, right? And again, part of the idea of the moral panic is that jazz rate, right? Really, Americans, when radio was out, and really we're talking about white Americans, right? They were worried about the impact of jazz on people. They thought jazz was way too sexy for people, and it was just too sensuous. This sort of African American, this black music, jazz, no, this is not good for people. And so they felt it was like overexcite people and all that. Let's go further back to another moral panic. Writing. Plato, 370 years before Christ. Socrates claimed that people will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written. He thought that this writing thing, remember, in his time, it was all orality, right? The Socratic method, it was about dialogue and conversation. He was like, this writing thing is this very inferior form of communication. The written word cannot defend itself, and it's going to rot people's brains, right? And so this was captured by Plato in the Phaedrus, right? That whole rant about writing. And so Orban, in an article called The Sisyphean Cycle of Technology Panics, I want to quote what they're saying here. Nearly identical questions about addiction to emergent technologies have been raised for radio, comic books, television, video games, and social media. Likewise, questions about social connection, violence, sex, and empathy are routinely found when reading psychological commentary on a range of new technologies. In none of these cases does evidence ameliorate society's concern. Rather, the focus of concerns shifts to a new technology as society simply moves on. So we have a moral panic about this, and then we have a moral panic about that, and then we have a moral panic about the other thing. So digital humanities itself caused a moral panic in academia. So here, and you'll see in this, these are things I heard, like I've been in the DH field for 25 years, since before it was called DH, right? They called it humanities computing back then. And so there's a young cyber Leo, right? And hearing the moral panic amongst faculty. Do I have to learn coding? Was one of the moral panics. Oh no, we're all prepared in literature. Now we also have to learn coding. Oh, we don't have time to do that. Or websites and blogs are self-publishing. That has no validity. That has no importance, right? Or why do distant reading? These sort of, Franco Moretti and others use statistical and created tools to be able to look not just at one text very closely, like we have done in academia, but to look at hundreds of texts at the same time, thousands of texts at the same time, and ask questions of those. Why do distant reading? Close reading is fundamental. This idea of close reading really, like, it's from the 1930s, right? Like it's kind of passé, but no, it's back, right? Or all the funding is going to digital humanities, which was also not true. Or DH is aligned with neoliberalism, which is ruining academia. So all kinds of moral panics around the very use of digital humanities. Or DH is just a fad. If I ignore it, it will go away. So let's think about AI and why it's having such an impact. And it's because it's what is called a disruptive technology, right? This idea of disruption. With the launch of ChatGPT, AI technologies were able to produce writing that would pass the Turing test. And that's kind of huge because we have long over-relied on writing as something that only humans can do. Generative AI made simple uses of writing for evaluation obsolete. So this whole idea that you can do whatever you want in terms of education, but as long as you take this qualifying exam and you pass it, then you are qualified, right? A board exam for engineering or for nursing or medicine practice or things like that. But now these machines can pass such exams. And so really we were using these things as a way to test knowledge, but also to test that it was a human being. And so generative AI makes cheating easy and presents new challenges for academic integrity, but writing and cheating existed before AI and will continue to exist after AI. Now, let's get serious. These are some expected social impacts that AI technologies will have. AI has been and will continue to be used unethically, right? To cheat in writing-based evaluations, to create fake content, to plagiarize content for profit. Like, this will happen. It will adversely affect academia in terms of empowering further attacks on academia. We don't need language departments. You have Duolingo, right? Technology replacing programs and actual instruction that has proven to be effective. Labor is going to have an impact in language and writing-based jobs. It's going to have an impact in coding-based jobs because it is very effective at coding. Politics is going to have an impact because it's going to power further fake news and misinformation. And in terms of citizens, in terms of people, I think there's going to be a diminished learning and writing and critical thinking skills. I think there's people that are going to not work hard at developing those skills because they will over-rely on AI. So what does academia do now? Well, cultivate AI literacy, research guiding documents, develop flexible policies that give agency to faculty while protecting students from bad practices, right? And academia in general and the humanities in particular can either turn to the digital humanities for guidance, right? Which is probably not going to happen. Ignore AI and hope it goes away. Or follow ed tech hype into an AI arms race, right? I have student produces computer generated AI, I have an AI detector, right? And so you have the countermeasures, one after the other. We'll probably have a combination of all three, or maybe none of them. Now, the humanities part of the digital humanities, they're essential to develop critical AI literacy. We will prepare people to critically engage with and use AI technologies more effectively. The humanities help prepare professionals with much needing writing and critical thinking skills. And I think training that we offer can help mitigate some of the problems caused by AI, like bias, attribution, digital divides, things like that. There are opportunities for digital humanities. Leadership, well, we can help guide departments and institutions through a period of early adoption of AI. In terms of research, to embrace cautiously, critically, AI tools and experiment with their potential. And instruction, experimenting with AI pedagogies and helping prepare students for an AI-inflected or infected world. Scott Galloway famously said, AI won't take your job. Someone using AI will take your job. And this leads me to this idea of the cyborg. Oh, before that, let's think a little bit about this framework called the Gartner Hype Cycle, which is, and this can be applied to many technologies, right? You can, like, the technology trigger, something is going to trigger that technology to take off, and people are going to there's going to be a lot of hype, right? There's going to be a lot of visibility where it's like, AI changes everything, AI everything, and we're going to reach a certain peak of inflated expectations. But then we have these inflated expectations. We're going to go into the trough of disillusionment where they're saying it can do all these magical things, but really it's kind of crappy. And then we're going to, as we work through the crappiness, there's a slope of enlightenment. It's like, oh, no, wait, it's useful for this. It's useful for that. Oh, this part doesn't suck, right? We can make this work until you reach a plateau of productivity. And so we can see this happening with AI right now as we speak. So let's have a brief theory moment. Let's talk about the cyborg. So Donna Haraway, 40 years ago, published a cyborg manifesto. And in that, she defined the cyborg as follows. A cyborg is a cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine and organism, a creature of social reality as well as a creature of fiction. Notice that she isn't saying human and machine, even though at the time, 1985, there's a lot of cyborgs in popular culture and fiction. First of all, you have cyberpunk going on in terms of science fiction, but you have Robocops and Terminators and all of those cyborgs going on, right? And of course, we have seen cyborgs all along. But she is talking about not just machine in a literal sense, cyborgs, but social realities. The fact that through our entire lives and even before we're born, our bodies are crisscrossed by radio and television signals, sonograms when we're in our mother's womb, right? We are shaped by television and media and radio and computing and gaming and all these things. All these things change and affect us. Even 40 years ago, she came to the conclusion that we are all already cyborgs. But nowadays, 40 years later, even more so. So for example, writing. We are cyborg writers already. We use word processing software that has things like spell and grammar checker integrated into them, right? Whenever there's a word that is spelled incorrectly, you have that squiggly line, and if you click on it, it'll suggest the correct spelling. You have tools like Grammarly that help correct sentence, and these kinds of errors. We have suggested text in emails and documents. If you're composing using Gmail, for example, it will suggest entire phrases. And sometimes that's what you wanted to say. And so you accept that phrase. Well, that was no longer written just by you. That was written by you and the predictive text algorithm that Gmail has integrated there. Predictive keyboards. When you're using your phone to write, do you write every single letter of every single word? No, you start writing a word and it will suggest the word and then you click on it and it'll complete it. And you keep going, right? Again, cyborg writing. Of course, there's computational writing, which we'll see some examples of. There's natural language almost got the mosquito. Natural language generation that's been around for a long time. Generative AI technologies and digital writing, which is something I'll be explaining next. So digital writing is writing, it refers to writing that embraces the potential digital media offers to produce generative, interactive, multimodal, mixing image, text, video, sound, all these things, kinetic, hypertextual, textual works that engage digital culture to go beyond the limitations of the page, whether the page is printed or virtual. We're used to putting ink on paper, print, handwriting, right? That's the page. When we go to the web and we open a word processor, what we get on that screen is a virtual page. And everything we do follows the logics of ink on paper, right? Of the page. Static text on a white background, for example. Now, there is something known as electronic literature, which actually predates the term digital writing, and it's literary digital writing. So let's see some examples, especially for those who are new to this concept. So some digital writing examples. Video poetry. So this is a piece created in 1999, 2000, by Young He Chang Heavy Industries, a Korean-based duo. Here comes the piece. Let's see if we can go full screen. Come on, internet, don't fail me now. And it's loading or not? Let's see. It's loading? Here we go. Let's go full screen. Will it let me? It won't let me go full screen, but let's see it there. Here it comes. Let's make sure the sound is working. I need to move the sound. I'll tell you in a second. So here they are writing on video, on music, creating essentially a video poem, right? Notice that the language is to the rhythm of the music. They're writing on time, but they're also writing on space and time coming together. And the piece keeps going. And the music keeps going. And it gets pretty sexy, this piece in particular. The struggle continues. So I recommend it. But again, you cannot do this on the page, right? There's no audio on a book. Even though, for a while, before the internet really took off and digital literature took off, you had people doing things where they would publish a book that had a CD. So you would listen to music or audio on certain parts, right? So we've been wanting to do this multimodality. The web just brings it all together very well. These folks were doing this for at least 5, 6, 7 years before YouTube existed. So for you, this is all pretty normal. But these people have been working as artists for the past 25 years. Here's more what you're used to, lyric videos. So The Struggle Continues is a great example of digital literature, right? Because it's very creative and digital. Let's make sure I'm showing this. Well, nope, let's go back. Here we go. So here's a lyric video by De La Soul called The Magic Number. You've seen stuff like this, right? One of the first things that people started to do when YouTube came out was to put up their favorite song and put the lyrics on, right? And at first it was very boring. It was just text displaying. But now people have tools to do some pretty neat stuff with the presentation of texts. So again, this is an example of digital writing. So this is not an original text. All they're doing is they're presenting the lyrics in a visual way, but in a visually interesting way, right? Whereas Younghead Chang Heavy Industries, they're doing original texts presented on original music. Okay, so that's one of the differences. Okay, let's continue. Interactive works. Here we have a piece called Limbo by Arndt Jensen and Dino Patti. This is a video game that they created at around 2010, 11, something like that. And the video game itself is not literary. I mean, it's a beautiful video game. It's a platformer, kind of a puzzle game, in which you have, I'm going to turn off the sound for that. But in this game, Limbo, you have this little child that is crossing a world full of different hazards. And he has to jump, right? And notice we have the word hot, hotel, right? And so notice that his weight makes the letters move and drop. And so he can cut the electricity to the hot wires that were turning on the sign hotel, right? So hot in electricity means it's running current. And so now he's able to jump on top of the letters and cross that area. I would suggest that this is an example also. This is like almost like a poem inside of a video game in which we not only have the words hot and hotel, and you could even say it's hot, hotel, right? Like hello, hot hotel. And then he goes through and continues to explore this very dangerous hotel. Hotels usually are places where you feel safe, right? And can rest. But this is actually quite a dangerous space that he's in. Let's continue. Interactive works. In this class, in the class I taught last week and early this week, one of our students created a game. And I don't have a video of the game, but it's about how capitalism steals surplus value. And you can explore the concept by hitting the capitalist with a hammer to release the workers and release the money. And it's a fun interactive work that is presenting an idea, right? Bots. If you go on Blue Sky, there's a ton of beautiful artistic and literary bots. For example, Taco Hell Menu generates automatically and will post every 2 hours a new Taco Bell kind of monstrosity menu item. So for a limited time only, we're unveiling the new crunchy chicken enchilada party pack. You know you want it. Or improbable maps will create, thank you. Improbable maps will generate this. The maps form crop circle. It shows terrain, its purpose to inform. Or Walt FML Whitman will take things with the hashtag FML, which means fuck my life, and it'll mix it with snippets of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. And so I concentrate toward them that are nigh, and I wait on the door slab, and my dad somehow found some pictures of my boyfriend having sex with some girl and went on a rampage about how pissed he was that he was cheating on me. Here's one called a bot called Girls Running from Houses. She arrives at the house hoping to find the groundskeeper who stole from her, but she meets the doctor who gives the appearance of being the girl's family or the closest thing she has to it. There's another bot that generates screams. Ah! And so there's many generative works. Here's a piece, an example of a piece that was created for this class, for the class I taught. And so campaign slogan, vibes over politics. She calls a dance off with the Senate. Congress can't stop bobbing their heads. The Oval Office just got a neon makeover. She tweets love to the Senate. Congress can't stop bobbing their heads. She's remixing democracy with some fierce bass drops. She throws shade at the Senate. Press conferences become music videos, and so on. This one generates endlessly these scenarios. Memes. Here's the coronavirus memes. You said you were sick. No, I said I have a case of corona. Woman yelling at cat, right? And there is a ton of electronic literature out there. Here's a snapshot of the electronic literature collection, volume 4. These are all available online. If you search for electronic literature collection, you will find 4 volumes published over the past 20 years of electronic literature. So closing thoughts. Why digital writing matters. Generative AI is good at replicating page-based writing, but it struggles with multimodal and digital writing. If you're thinking of writing, I mean, remember, these things are trained on humanity's greatest hits and the web's greatest hits and Reddit's greatest hits, not even greatest hits, all of Reddit, right? All of the web that they could get their hands on, all of the books they could get their hands on, all of the scholarship that's open access, and also the stuff that's not open access, pirated, right? They get their hands on everything and train these models on that. So these models are able to generate that, but they cannot generate digital writing the way I have shown you. Or you can use it to create digital writing, right? Digital writing is also important because it shows us the possibilities and the future of writing in digital media. I mean, we get a taste. How will human beings express themselves in the future? How will we express ourselves in the future? It goes beyond the limits of the page. And it is a space for human-centered cyborg digital writing. Thank you. And I provided a link to my blog there. Thank you so much. And now I'm happy to take questions and have a conversation.
Thanks to you for the talk. Now it's open for everyone. Questions, comments.
Please raise your hand. Any questions you might have. I know.
continuation questions are also welcome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the digital writing course, for those who were unable to take it, we had the students, several of whom are here, create bots, program bots, and deploy them on Blue Sky that generate texts, right? We had them take an existing computer-generated poem or two and modify them, hack them to produce new generative pieces, right? We had them use AI to create new frameworks for writing